Welcome to another exciting episode of Humanity 8.0, a podcast where we talk about our post-truth present and our transhuman future, with the aim of sketching out the outlines of what awaits us in the years and the decades ahead of us. This podcast is brought to you by Rokos. Companies with limited IT budgets and personnel can now get the same cybersecurity protection as big enterprises. Rokos' Secure Access Service Edge, SASE solution, with Zero Trust, provides enterprise-grade comprehensive cybersecurity so that you can focus on your business. For more, please visit www.rokos.com. That's ROQOS.com. And now, here's your host, Dr. Ahmed Bouzid, founder and CEO of Witlingo.
So the trial itself, right? What does the FTC want to do? What is their best case scenario in terms of we have won? What does win mean? I mean, the government, right? In that trial.
Yeah, the Department of Justice.
Yeah.
So yes, so this is a I guess I would say an old case, right? It was filed in 2020. Then the complaint itself went through amendments. Then we have the Biden administration. We have the head of the Department of Justice Antitrust Division, Jonathan Cantor, staff taking over the case. And at this point, what they are seeking really is to set a precedent on what the illegal behavior is in this specific case of the exclusive agreements that Google celebrated with different phone manufacturers to become the default search engine or the default option in this specific market. From what I've been hearing in the last 2 days, 3 days, but today's the third day, right? Okay. In the last 2 days, between the opening statements and some of the reports from journalists, I myself haven't gone to the courtroom. I will be going next week. But I think something important that hopefully will get a resolution is market definition. So the government is arguing the market to judge the abuse of monopoly power coming from Google is the market of general search. So just imagine DuckDuckGo, Google in itself, Brave, which is another smaller search engine, versus the specialized search engines such as Amazon or Yelp. And so this is not a fight. I mean, we're not trying to, from my understanding, it's not like the case wouldn't proceed because we are unable to define the market. We have already overcome that stage. That is why we're in the trial. But what I find interesting is that Google is putting a lot of emphasis and a lot of work in trying to convince the judge that they are facing a lot of competitors and they are constantly being challenged, because if you expand the definition of the market, then of course you're going to have the entirety of just everybody is competing against Google, which is very strange to me, and I think to any publisher or any advertiser, because that is not the way we think about it. And markets are not like a thing that comes from nature. Markets are something that we as human beings within a society conceptualize. So how do we really conceptualize it? I think there is a supremacy of reality. Like, what do people consider this in the reality of things? And for me, the reality is that the market that we should be really focusing on is that of general search, where we have a clear numbers that Google basically concentrates more than 90% of searches, right, around the world. In that specific market. And then second is the defaults matter. For anyone who's been in the data privacy discussions, the concept of default will sound very familiar to them. because all of the rules that have to do with digital advertising and whether we allow advertisers to display their ads to us on publications, and also whether we allow the third-party providers that basically work on the background of certain websites to track people around the web. I don't know if you've seen those like accept all cookies windows that pop up, right, on either your like on your cell phone or your laptop. The reason why we have those pop-ups is because we live in a world where the default practice is collecting personal data. And so we can only opt out. But the default is not, don't collect my data until I say so. The default is anyone can collect my data until I say stop. So that world really is that is basically the backbone of the internet now. That is why Google is so big, Amazon is so big, Facebook is so big. We have turned the default to be collect everything that you want or anything that you want. And then, of course, there are certain rules, right? For example, kids that go online, you're not supposed to be collecting their information and selling them to advertisers. Healthcare information is supposed to be very sensitive and very private, and you aren't supposed to use it also for marketing purposes unless the person says so. And you have all of these disclosures that you have to say yes to, that you don't ever read, right? So, but so to me, when I hear the discussion about defaults matter in this case, it brings me to the discussion of data privacy. And to me, it's very clear that it matters. So we'll see how that plays out in the courtroom, right? And third, something that we are also forgetting, I think, because in general, just going after the behavior of companies such as Google entails looking at its behavior in different markets, is that the case it's also about monopolization or maintaining an illegal monopoly, not only in the search market as the default search engine, but also in the search advertising market. They are connected in the sense that because Google had secure, through this exclusive agreements, it had secured so many search access points, which is what the lawsuit calls it. Then it secured all of this access to data that they could collect. And that also helped, in a way, build the search, advertising market. They are basically that search advertising market if they are the #1 search engine in the world.
Yeah.
And so something interesting that happens, and this is probably something that consumers feel even more distant from, which is the mechanics of how advertisers and small businesses place advertising on search engines. And so nowadays, which is something that didn't always exist, there are platforms. Well, there's actually one, Search Advertising 360, which is a platform by Google that integrates, let's imagine just a dashboard, right? And you are, I don't know, you sell shoes, and then you want to place ads on not only Google search engine, but maybe also Bing, maybe also Yahoo, YouTube. And so this is a sort of a tool that helps you organize the different places where you can place your ads, but they are all connected to a search engine. So whenever you search things on YouTube, you may see on the right side corner that there's like a little section where you also have ads. So that's also search ads, but that is for a specialized search engine. And because it's only videos, right? And so in this platform, something that the lawyers, the DOJ prosecutors were also arguing in their opening statements was that Google was also given preferential treatment to its own search engine without advertisers having a way to control it. Because right now, the way that advertising occurs on the different websites that we go to, or like search engines, video, whatever, you name it, Instagram, it all happens in an automated way. There are these algorithms that select based on what you as an advertiser have input and in the type of audiences that you want to reach. But in the end, the ad placement in itself is determined by machine learning.
Yeah.
And it matters a lot how the company that is running the platform that integrates all of these different methods by which they're going to place ads, it matters how they're designing their algorithms. And so in a way for advertisers, and so this affects, I guess, not consumers, but clients, right? It's of Google, according to the DOJ's arguments, is that it does create a higher cost for them. It's a hidden higher cost because they end up paying more to Google because their search advertising or search advertisements are they're just more costly because they are the most searched, the most used search engine.
Yeah.
And so there's no way to sort of avoid that. And so that is part of the case too. So search engine and also the market of search advertising, which is very important. Like that's the backbone of Google. After Google built its search advertising business, it went into the business of what we call advertising technologies that bring together third-party websites such as any news publisher that you can think of that's online, and advertisers want to put display ads on those publications, right? So that's a different market where Google is also being accused of maintaining an illegal monopoly. The trial for the lawsuit, there's an expectation that is going to be scheduled for some time next year before let me just say that again. There is an expectation for that lawsuit to be scheduled sometime within the first half of next year. So that's also another big case, and specifically for this administration, it is the case that has been entirely built by this administration. So, or at least filed by this administration. And there are many more. At the state level, et cetera, right? But yeah, it's I think it's interesting that now the only sad part about this trial is that we don't have access to any audio feed, any video, nothing. So we're only going to find out what's been happening in the courtroom through the journalists that are doing the reporting every day, being in the courtroom.
This is a federal case. Why don't we have access to the live feed, or what's the is that the default, or is there a reason why? Trade secrets?
So I don't really know the history of how these things occurred, but technically from what I read in the request, so open markets, American Economics Liberty Project, other think tanks got together and we filed a request to have that audio feed available because around, I think it was early August, if I'm not mistaken, Google and the DOJ and the judge, like they were discussing whether it would be whether the public would have access to the proceedings, right? And so Google's argument was that they are, because of the nature of the trial, they are most likely to reveal trade secrets, information that is sensitive and that it is protected by law in a way not to be divulged. So they just opposed to having either video or an audio feed, which the DOJ did not oppose. They were fine with it. And so that is when this public interest organizations, including my employer, we intervened and we filed this request. And we weren't requesting to, it's not like we didn't care about the trade secrets, because that's a different law that I don't really know about, but I know that it exists. And so we were basically requesting to have an audio feed of the portions of the unsealed portions of the complaint of what was going to be discussed. Because really, if you look at the files of the different complaints in the back and forth between plaintiffs and defendant, everything is redacted. Well, not everything, but there are a lot of portions that are redacted. And so we're basically just asking for the days that the proceedings were going to touch on matters that weren't sensitive to Google's business, if the public could have access to it. And the judge's decision was not to do that.
Okay. So are the journalists are the journalists who are there, are they instructed to not write about certain things? How are they?
No, so they just cannot do a live transmission of anything. There are certain rooms where they're going to, I think there are two rooms. One's the press room, there's an overflow room. And I think in neither of them, or maybe one, you definitely cannot broadcast anything.
Can I record it and then play it?
And that is what I'm not so sure of. I'm gonna find that out next week.
Yeah.
But they definitely can't broadcast anything, or they can only write, as I understand it. You can't even record anything. So you're gonna be taking notes.
Write, okay. What if you're a fast writer and you write exactly the trade secret they described?
No, so that is another thing. Something that I read on the courtroom's document for media access.
Yeah.
Is that whenever there are days where those trade secrets or those witnesses that supposedly are going to give testimony, and it's also protected, whenever those witnesses are there, or whenever there's conversation around the sealed portions of the complaint, media is not going to be allowed in the courtroom either.
So it'll be a private session.
Yes, basically.
I see. Exactly. Okay. Man, we have only 10 minutes and I only have a hard stop. Let me ask you this. You have been with Open Markets for how long?
I just turned 2 years.
2 years. Congratulations. And so, what is your main job there in Open Markets, an organization that I really respect?
Sure. Yes, I work for a program that's called the Center for Journalism and Liberty. So Open Markets it's a public interest organization that uses journalism and also legal expertise to shine a light on monopoly power and all the dangers that it poses to democracy.
Yeah.
And so I am a journalist, but I am also a policy analyst. So part of my job is not only report on the problems or the problems that we don't know we have yet. It's also finding the solutions, going through historical records. For example, revitalizing this frameworks like you were mentioning, common carriage, like trying to look at all of the set of tools that American laws have today, but also looking at the legislative initiatives that may help boost the I guess the impact of the already existing tools. And so I basically, my job, maybe it's not so much about doing like on the ground reporting as much as trying to find the solutions to the problems that a lot of journalists are actually doing the on the ground reporting for. For some things, for example, I would say data privacy. So we do run a newsletter where we publish original reporting. So I've reported and I published, for example, opinion pieces on Tech Policy Press. I had one also on surveillance of kids through school devices on Popular Science. Another one in the Washington Monthly about retail media, what that means, what dangers it poses to the news publishers more generally, and also data privacy from the consumer side. So it's more about putting some of that research that I do, that I have time to do, that it doesn't happen in a lot of newsrooms.
Yeah.
Because it's different. It's a different pace, right? And so I actually try to be more of a tool for journalists,
Yeah.
who are not necessarily devoting all their time to looking at these things, but who want to have that insight of what is the intersections between, at least in my specific program, news media, freedom of the press, monopoly power, and regulating digital platforms. So that's pretty much,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. How about access to the internet, and for example the fact that effectively, and this is probably something that resonates with everybody, right? There is one cable company, and you're at their mercy for your internet access. The competition is almost nil, maybe one or two, and they will tell you when they will come, and then you have to wait for them and all that stuff, as opposed to, and plus, they can hike up their rates anytime they want. You have very little leverage as a consumer to do anything about it, as opposed to what I think is sort of like a miracle that happened in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is the city itself built their own, infrastructure, which apparently is the fastest one in the whole country. And in fact, not only that, but it generated so much revenue with lower cost. It's you can see that that as an example of something that could happen once we go beyond this private interests just doing as they please because they have monopolies, and not surprisingly, states, I think most states outlaw local municipalities to be able to do that. You familiar with that? Do you cover it? Is that part of your portfolio? Accessibility?
Um, it it's not part of mine, but it could be. So thank you for bringing that up. I am just learning about all of these different um, publicly funded initiatives. There's
Yeah.
a really cool book. I don't remember the author, but the name of the book is Internet for the People.
Right.
And he describes basically all of these movements around the country where these publicly funded options can thrive, but it requires a lot of effort, not only from an engaged community, but also from uh, authorities, majors, governors, who really have that willingness to hear the people and their needs. And a big lesson from that book is that it is also, I guess, a bit of the inability from communities to rise up and have this alternative options like you're describing. It has to do with the influence of different monopolies in the media sector that dictate federal policy in a way that it benefits them, right? And it doesn't leave room for these other alternatives. I think in the spectrum of different think tanks and that analyze this kind of policy, for example, in terms of media specifically, we have Reveal Local Media, which is a think tank that is led by Steve Waltman, who cares and has very good research about these publicly funded options or policy that is designed around publicly funding more local journalism.
Yeah.
I think we work in tandem in the sense that, at least at Open Markets in the Center for Journalism and Liberty, we care about, for all of those who are interested in having a sustainable business model where they can have control of the way they make revenues and not face this high barriers of entry. We care about the policy that allows them to grow in that specific way, right? It doesn't mean, and me personally, I'm definitely not opposed to what you're describing. But I think it requires a different set of analysis. And I think within the community of public interest organizations, we're each building expertise in certain things that are complementary, all of them, to just foster a more inclusive, more just, and a strong democracy. Because let's not forget that, yeah, we talk about business and competition, and let's have options and consumer choice. In the end, we're all people, right? Trying to enjoy life, I think, at least me personally,
Me too.
and having more freedom of movement in general. Whenever I book like a flight, I sometimes get so upset. Like, I feel like everything is worse in the airline industry.
Yeah.
Or yeah, so it's everything in the end. I think it should be thought from perspective of how are we making our lives better, right? And businesses exist because there's an expertise that they may have are producing A, B, C, X, Y, and Z things. And organizations like ours that work in the public interest exist because there's also another side of corporate interests and lobbies that are pouring a lot of money to keep their interests at the forefront of our society. So I do think we need something to counterbalance that, and that is what drew me to join open markets.
That's wonderful. Okay, wonderful. So this is 11 o'clock. I know you have a call. I would love to have a follow-up after this trial. I think I just barely, touched on the surface of the surface. So if you have an hour sometime in the next few months, I'd love to have you back on. You don't need to make any promise.
Yeah, I think we can definitely arrange that. I need to get on it and write more about it this coming days, and also I need to attend the courtroom. It's just another part of my job is also not only putting on my reporter hat, but also supporting all of the different activities that have to do with research for reports, event organization, and so yeah, it's a little bit different. So, but yes, absolutely.
Well, it sounds like you have a fun job for sure.
It is. I am enjoying it.
It is wonderful. Karina Montoya, thank you so much for spending 1 hour with us. I look forward to speaking with you some more. I will definitely try to attend that event coming up at the end of the month. Just I'll ping you just to remind you if you can send me something when you have something up.
Yeah, I'll put you in our contacts list, so you'll get a blast from
excellent.
From our comms director.
I'll note about that. I know you're busy. Thank you so much again, Karina.
Sure, Ahmed. Thank you for this interview. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
You've been listening to Humanity 8.0 with your host, Dr. Ahmed Bouzid, founder and CEO of Witlingo. Brought to you by Rocos. Thanks for listening.